In this episode of the IT Experts podcast, we answer the question, when you want to change your PSA, what do you do next? Welcome to the IT Experts podcast, the only podcast to help MSPs scale to 1 million, and if already there, get to 5 and go faster. At the end of the day, isn't it all about building a business that works for you rather than you for it? I hope you enjoy the show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast. We've got a great friend of the MSP Growth Hub back in the house today. We have Chris Timm, who is a PSA consultant. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. Chris, how are you doing today?
I am good, thank you. Good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is to you. To you, Ian. Good day, Ian.
Good day. There we go. That's got it out of the way.
Our Australian listeners, good day, Ian.
We're all now in Australia. Great to have you on the podcast, Chris. It's been too long since we've had you on the podcast. And today we're going to be talking about changing your PSA in your MSP. Now, for many MSP owners, that is going to be, you're going to get shivers on your spine, you're going to get hives, you're going to come out in spots and all sorts of things, because this is the biggest thing, one of the biggest things in the tech stack. It can be one of the most complicated things. And as many people know, at the Growth Hub, Stuart and I are not technical. Chris is technical, which is why he's going to come and help us out, expel some myths today, because there's this little old thing called shiny ball syndrome that most MSPs have. Most MSPs have. Nice new shiny PSA, nice new RMM. Oh, look at this package that my tech stack has just created. And we hear it all the time. Which ones you're moving, which ones are right. I wouldn't do it this way, I wouldn't do it that way. And there's some great, amazing products out there. There's some incredible companies out there. Some really disruptive newcomers out there. If we mention any of those PSA businesses today, obviously there are many more out there that we love and our clients love. So we're not missing you out. We're just going to try and include as many as possible. Chris, but let's just start from the top. Many MSPs start off, they build a PSA, they have an RMM tool, they try and create this tech stack as in its basic format. But there comes a point, doesn't there, when what got us here is not going to get us there. Things start to creak and the question pops up in their head, probably either in the middle of the night or in some nightmare or even a peer group. I think I should change my PSA. How does that, in your view, Chris, with the MSPs that you're working with, how does that present itself? What's going on around? Talk to us about the PSA journey for many MSPs and the maturity. What does it look like, and when you think or know or need to change your PSA?
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say, before you say that, your shiny ball syndrome, I call that the magpie effect, right? Because that is, we're all like little magpies who are like, oh, shiny thing. We're always looking for something new. And I think that's just human nature. I think that's what we all do, right? In everything we do in life. But yeah, just in terms of, what am I saying about why people are switching and what are the reasons? I think a lot of that comes down to, and again, I hope this doesn't offend a lot of people, but I'm going to say it anyway, because you know me, I say what's on my mind. I think we're all like sheep, right? A lot of people just follow what everyone else is doing, right? And in this industry, MSP, in my opinion, stands for mad sheep people, right? Because that's what we do, right? We are, we see one company going, hey, I'm going to switch to this new PSA tool, and everyone goes, oh, this is cool. Again, it's that shiny new toy syndrome, shiny syndrome. And I'm not saying that happens with everybody, obviously, that there's as many people who will stick with what they've got and will stay as they are. But there are a lot of people who will switch a PSA tool for sometimes the wrong reasons, or sometimes they've been thinking about it for a while, and then everyone else is kind of switching to a PSA tool and they think, actually, we've been thinking about this for a while, so we should really switch. And I think a lot of the reasons why people would be doing that is very often they might be tied into a vendor that is overcharging them, or that they tied into a vendor who the rates increase every year, or even worse, they get tied into a 1 million year contract, right, with somebody, and they can't get out of it. And then what ends up happening is that company then has no innovation, no development, and ends up, you get stuck in this product that is stuck in the 80s, so to speak. And obviously, I'm not going to mention names. They get stuck. And this isn't just PSA tools, by the way. This happens, I think, with RMM tools, with antivirus backups, all these kind of tools. You get stuck in this thing where there's no development happening, and then your business might be growing and the tool isn't growing with you. There's lots of things you can't do. So there are a lot of valid reasons why people would move from one PSA tool to the other. But I do think a lot of it is also down to the PSA tool that they move to, I think is very much down to the shiny ball syndrome or the magpie effect. It's very much a case of like, here's a shiny new toy. I'm going to move to this PSA tool because everyone else is moving to it. And very often it's not a case of let's really think about, is this the right tool to move to?
Let's talk about should you move, should you not move? Because what we hear a lot of time in the MSP Growth Hub when the guys are chattering is, oh, are you not doing that with X product? Are you not doing that with Y product? And they buy a product and they use it, but they don't open up all of the windows in the advent calendar and realize all the different things it should be doing. And they're only using it to a certain capability. So the question is, Chris, how does an MSP know when their PSA is serving them properly so that they can then make an informed decision to say this no longer fits my business and I need to look for something more? Because as I say so many times, they're just not using all the functions, are they? How do you self-audit your PSA? Can you self-audit your PSA?
And that's a great question. And I think it comes down to exactly that. It comes down to, what are you using the PSA tool for? And I think you've seen me around on various forums where people ask the same question: should I move my PSA tool? Or what's the best PSA tool to move to? And I always say, what you need to do is look at what is right for your business. So what are you currently trying to achieve? And is your PSA tool helping you to achieve that? Now, very often, and this is why I've made a living out of this, and I think why a lot of consultants make a living out of this kind of stuff, is because people typically use PSA tools as a service desk. They go, hey, I need a service desk and I need something to service my customers, something for tickets. And they buy a PSA tool and they go, yeah, I know the PSA tool can do all these other things. It can do billing, it can do project management, it can do opportunity management, it can do all these things, but they don't know how to do that. And so what they end up then doing is using it predominantly as a service desk. So it then gets to a point where they go, I need to do billing through it. But because they don't really know how to do billing, they just automatically assume that the tool isn't the right tool for them, because they're like, well, I've never done this before and I don't know how to do it in the tool. So I think sometimes people make that decision of, this isn't the right tool for me because it doesn't do what I want it to do, even though it actually does do what they want it to do. So I think, and I guess what I'm trying to say on this is, what you need to really do is think, okay, what did I buy this PSA tool for? What was the reason for that? What pain points do I have in my business? And is this PSA tool that I am currently using going to be able to solve those problems? Like billing is a big thing. Am I going to be able to bill my customers? Am I going to be able to send them an invoice out of this tool? And am I going to be able to track how much time I'm spending against that customer's contract? And am I going to be able to see whether that customer is profitable or not? If that's the case, then it actually doesn't matter at that point which PSA tool you use, because all of them are going to do that. What it then is going to come down to is, which one is going to do it better, which one is going to have a nicer user experience in doing that. And I think a lot of it's going to boil down to that, because every PSA tool, and you've heard me, I think, use this analogy quite a few times, is a PSA tool, in my opinion, is like a car, right? A car is a car. It has a steering wheel, it has four wheels. Some have engines, some don't, but they all pretty much fundamentally do the same thing, right? Whether you buy the cheapest car or the most expensive car, they're going to take you from A to B or A to Z. But what the difference between those cars is the after sales experience that you get, the comfort in the car, those kinds of things. And it's the same as PSA tools. I think every single one of them will do every single thing that every MSP needs, but it's just some of them will do them slightly differently and slightly better. And so as an MSP, I think you have to think about, what is it that you want? Do you want, and I hear all the time people go, I want to use that tool because it's got a better interface. And I'm like, at the end of the day, is it all about the interface or is it all about the functionality? To me, a car with a steering wheel and four wheels, I don't care whether the door slams slightly differently or whether it's got the old-fashioned roll-down windows. What do I need the car for? I need the car to go from here to there. And that car is going to give me the ability to do that. It's the same thing with a PSA tool, is don't focus on the look and feel of it and how pretty it is and all these things. Focus on, what is it actually going, what am I trying to achieve? And is this tool that I'm using going to help me to achieve those?
So step one is work out what you want it for. Your car analogy, do I want to race in it? Do I just want to drive to Sainsbury's in it? Do I just want it to get me from A to B? What do I care about? What's important? And also, I think the thing that you just mentioned there, Chris, is what you think is the features that you think it has, like the new interface. Is that really the thing, or is that the shiny ball? Is that going to be the functionality? Next step, what's the best thing to do? Is it to speak to somebody like you, or is it to speak to somebody like your account manager to see whether or not the product will do what you want it to do? What's your recommendation? I'm asking a consultant for a recommendation on whether or not. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Well, I need to be really careful how I answer this question, because I got into trouble for answering it in a particular way on somebody else's podcast.
Well, you should know the answer then, shouldn't you?
So the answer is, I think, definitely in the first instance, probably speak to your account manager, because I would say that the account manager is going to know what the functionality of the product is going. Well, at least they should know whether what you are trying to do is, if the product is able to do that. They may not be able to tell you exactly how to do it in the correct way, but they're going to know that it is possible. However, and I'm going to put a however out here, and this is where I'm going to probably get slammed. You're going to get all these people hating your podcast now because you've had me on. But a lot of the time, when you call up your account manager, you get the whole sales spiel on everything else that they're trying to sell you. So I think that's why I would say, if it is something that you're going to speak to your account manager about, go in with a very clear plan of what you want to speak to them about, and say, I want to understand is, can my PSA tool do this? And if so, can you refer me, or can you show me how it's going to do this without the whole sales spiel and all this? I just want to know, is it capable and can it do that? But then, of course, I'm also going to say there are so many consultants out there that do PSA tools, that do P consulting like you guys do, growth stuff. So there's lots of these different forums where you can ask your peers about, okay, I'm thinking of switching to a PSA tool. I'm using X product. Does this product, is it capable of doing this? And is there somebody in this group who's doing that? And can you show me how to do that? So yeah, I would say there's many ways you can get that information. But I think, in the first instance, I would say probably contact, especially if you don't know that it can do something, right? You might not know that your PSA tool can do something. Go and ask your account manager, can it do this? And if so, can you show me how? But then also, don't just take what they're saying as, yes, this is what it does, because we all know that every vendor under the planet is going to tell you that their product is the best and it can do things the best way. So back that up with talking to your peers, talking to consultants, talking to colleagues, going onto all the different forums and finding out, how do other people do this and what's the best way to do it.
Brilliant. Just a quick message, actually, and this might cause more people to be more deterred by this podcast than what you just said. I think it's a message for the vendors. The RMSPs that we work with love and loathe vendors because of the product that will help them achieve their goals. But the thing that's pivotal to the success of that vendor and the way that they would respond and promote you as a product solution is your account manager. We know lots of vendors. Some account managers we hear are incredible. Some account managers, other people would want to stick pins in their eyes. Please don't sell to MSPs when they're already an account, because they already know that they've already got it. They just want an honest and open relationship. They just want you to help them out. It's all reciprocal, right? We'll help you grow and recommend your business. The recommendations and this whole channel that we've got, and on a bit of a rant now, is incredible for referrals. If someone loves your product, they're going to tell 10 people. If they don't like your product or they don't like the way you do things, they're going to tell 30 people. Vendors, we need you in the channel to help provide these solutions and these innovations. But the account management really is the most important part, and laboring in on that.
And I think if I can just add a further nail to the coffin, because I think we've lost it now, right? We've pretty much all gone from here. But one of the biggest things, I think, and why people don't necessarily speak to their account manager, is because their account manager changes every day, every week. Right? There is never the same account manager, especially in the much bigger companies. Some of the smaller, new kids on the block PSA companies, your account manager stays as your account manager for the duration of your contract. But it happens all the time that the reason why people don't go back to the vendors or are upset with the vendors is because they phone up and their account manager's left, or they've been fired, or they've been moved on, or something's happened. Maybe there needs to be, and this is a shout out to a vendor, rather than having necessarily even a specific dedicated person as an account manager, maybe have a team of people, or have an account management department that You can speak to, there's a group of people there who know your account. And if one of those people leaves or gets moved on, or whatever the case might be, there's always somebody that you know that you can speak to, Chris or Ian or Bob or Frank or whoever it is, because you're speaking to the team.
It's so important, and we hear it every single week. Anyway, right, we've made the decision. We're going to move PSAs. Where does the first step in terms of due diligence start off with? Because we know that people, again, love to schmooze and get the MSPs that get you out for we're going to go for a meal out. We're going to do this. Ignore all that for the minute. Let's look at the functionality. How does a decision tree work with what does my next PSA look like? What's that process look like, Chris?
That's a good question. So now you've made the decision to switch. What is it going to look like? So the first thing you probably want to be looking at is the how much of a ball ache is it to move, right? Because let's face it, PSA tools are not easy things to switch, because you got to take into account that a lot of people, especially if you've been using a PSA tool for a very long time, you've probably got tons of tickets. So what do you want to do with those tickets? Do you want to bring them over into the new tool? Do you want to start afresh? I have ideas on that. Most of the time, I would say bring over a few of those tickets. You don't necessarily need to bring every single one over, but make that decision on what do I need to bring over and how easy is it to do that? Is it a manual uplift? Do I have to export all of that stuff into a CSV file and then do an import into the other tool? Because that's going to be a massive time consideration and a massive time drain in your business for you to be able to actually get somebody to do that. And then also think about, not just from that point of view, but also the whole learning curve of moving to a whole new PSA tool. There's a massive learning curve, because you've now going from one tool that does one thing in a particular way, moving to a completely different tool that does the same thing in a completely different way. A ticket isn't a ticket. A ticket in one tool is completely different to the way that the ticket runs in another tool. So it's trying to say, okay, now we've made the decision. What do we need to, what are those pain points? And so one of them is manual processes. How hard or how easy is it to move? What is our training going to look like for our team? The learning curve in terms of what do people need to do to make sure that their team is adopting that new tool really easily? And then a really big one as well is things like integrations, right? If you've got all these other tools that you're using in your business, you've got documentation tools, you've got RMM tools, you've got backup tools. Is there any integration into the new PSA tool that you're moving with all of those integrations or all of those third-party tools? And also, if not, then do you need to change one of those third-party tools so that it can integrate with your new PSA? And then that opens up a whole new can of worms, because now you've got two products that you need to be looking at changing. So there's a bunch of different things like that is going to be that somebody needs to take into consideration. And then, of course, there's the ramp up period. And I always use this again, I use my car analogy because I love car analogies. I think it makes it really easy for people to understand it. So you can't just go from riding a bicycle to getting into a manual car and driving it. You've got there's a whole ramp up period. You've got to learn how to do it. You've got to understand the different terminologies. It's the same as going from a manual to an automatic. You have no clutch, all these things. So it might be a simple thing to do because you know how to drive the car, but there's ramp up periods that you need to learn how to go from one tool to another. And I guess that comes back to that whole learning curve of people understanding how those tools work. And then in terms of another big one, I guess, is if you're moving, and this probably comes back to this whole ramp up period, is there's going to be a time when you're going to have a crossover of two PSA tools. So you're probably going to be paying for two tools for a few months. And at what point do you then say, okay, I'm going to cut off and go to this tool and stop paying for this tool? But there's all those sort of things that you need to be thinking about and need to take into consideration once you've made that decision to move to another PSA tool.
This is a massive project, right? How long? What do you say is the average time from, not from the decision, but once you've decided and you come in the Monday morning and you've got the new PSA tool, it's fresh in the box, it's white, there's nothing in it, it's all nice and clean and tidy, to when you then decommission the other one? What's the average time that you work with clients on in that period to swap over?
That's a good question. And I think it does depend at this point on how much data there is to move and which tool you're moving from and to. There's some tools that have built-in migration paths from one PSA tool to another. So you can click a few buttons, a few drop downs, and it just sucks all the data in and you're good to go. So those kinds of implementations are going to be substantially quicker than those where you have to be doing lots of manual exporting into CSV files and then importing into the tool. But typically, normally we would say, and PSA tools they're not massive things that take years to install. Typically, you're probably talking, and if you spoke to most consultants, a fresh install is around probably 20 to 30 hours. Now, that's hours of that consultant's time. How long those 30 hours take is normally up to the MSP. I could do an implementation for 20 hours and we could do an hour a day and we can get the whole thing done in 20 days. But again, there's all those things to think about is, okay, now you've got this data to export and import. How long is that going to take you to export your data? That could be another 3 weeks because you've got all this other stuff going on in your business. So that 20 hours is going to be potentially expanded over a much longer period of time. Typically, though, I normally say to most people that I like to do a 1 hour session per week, which means on a 20-hour engagement, you're talking 20 weeks to get the product fully up and working and understood. Because what you don't want to do is do a 20-day implementation and then people get to the end and go, I don't know what's happening here because this is too quick. So I typically tend to say to people, we have to do 1 call a week. So you need to budget and bank on at least 20 weeks of getting your tool up and working. And that's going to be us then saying, okay, it's going to give you a week to go play with what we talked about and understand it and really get to understand the product, because you're going to have a much more successful implementation if you do that than if you try to rush it through and get it done in 20 days.
So it's 4 to 6 months then, isn't it? Is what we're looking at really.
We're looking at 4 to 6 months. Exactly. And a lot of people, what they end up doing is they end up making these decisions where they suddenly go, I don't want to use X product anymore. And they cancel and they have a month left. And then they go, oh, crap, now I have to get a whole new PSA tool installed in a month. And it happens all the time. So I like it when people go, okay, I've got 6 months left on my PSA tool. I made the decision to cancel. Okay, so now I know I've got a really good long length of time where I can say, okay, let's get this product installed take it slow, do 1 session a week, and really get to learn and understand how this tool works, rather than people who just suddenly go, crap, I need to leave today.
So we got investment in time, doing some due diligence, selecting the right product, making sure you got it the right way, making sure that you're thinking about how the integrations are going to work. Have you got any uploads? Have you got any APIs and all of that kind of stuff? God, sounds like I know what I'm talking about here. The question I got for you, Chris, is MSPs are busy, right? Apparently, we hear lots of times they're busy. They're busy. If you took an average technical operations of an MSP, and I'm going to say somewhere high 7-figure turnover, they've got a technical team of 4 or 5 people, something like that, and they're running at, I'm going to say they're going to run at 90% utilization, right? Because they're busy, they've got stuff coming in. If they're with a growth hub, they've probably got some new leads coming in as well and some great account management stuff and all that going on. How much allowance do they need to make in terms of a technical lead sitting down looking at this new over this 4 to 5 month period? How much? So if what I'm getting at is, if an MSP is already busy and then he goes and brings in a new PSA, you're just going to cause a massive problem because you're not going to get enough time, and that 6 months is going to turn to 12 months. So how much fat or how much tolerance do you need in your operational capacity to be able to bring in a new PSA?
That's a really good question. And I think it's the person who's doing that implementation in the business needs to have enough time. And I don't have an answer for exactly what that time is.
Is it like a full-time job? It must be like at least a part-time, half a day, half of your job a week, isn't it?
Yeah, almost half of your job a week. So I would say probably almost 50% of your time. Because, again, this isn't something you can just have somebody spend an hour on once a week and come on a session with a consultant, then forget about it and do nothing with the PSA tool. It's something that somebody needs to say, right, we've just done an hour session. Now we need to go and implement all of these things that the consultant or whoever it is has helped us to do. Or we've watched a video on YouTube. Now we need to go and spend another few hours actually setting it up and planning it and getting it working and all of that kind of stuff. So And I think that comes back to probably some of the mistakes people make is they think, oh, we can just get one of our technicians to work on this to get it going and we'll be fine. And that person, they need to be dedicated to the project, and they need to have somebody that has the time and capacity. So there is going to be a huge amount of downtime as well of that person's time is going to be taken away from them, their role, while they are actually helping with setting up the PSA tool.
So this is open heart surgery for an MSP. We need to have a really defined scope. We need to have what is the right product, what's the ingredients to the pie, and how we're going to make it. We need to have resources allocated towards this, and you also need to have a budget, don't you? Because this is going to cost you in many different ways across the life of this project. What are some of the mistakes or the pitfalls that you've seen people make around costings, Chris, that's caught people out, where they said, it's either taken me longer or it's cost me a lot more money? Where can you help the MSP save some money doing this?
Good question. And I think you're right. There are a lot of costs, right? There's the cost of the downtime, because again, you've got to have this person who you're now paying to do that job doing a completely different job. So there's resource and training costs. There's the cost of the consultant to help you implement this product. And then over and above that, there's the cost of the actual PSA tool. And sometimes moving from one PSA tool to the other is a huge uplift in cost. I've seen some people, their monthly amounts that they are paying go up by 50 to 60% because the PSA tool that they're moving to is substantially more expensive than the tool that they were on before. And I've seen this all the time. So there's all these costs that people have to take into account. It's not just throwing 4 or 5 grand at a consultant going, help me with this. It's all these other costs you've got to take into account. And I think people don't think they realize all of the other costs. And then especially if you've made the decision to move and now you've got to change a different tool because maybe you're using a particular, like in some case, billing platforms that might work with product X that don't work with product Y. Now you've got to change an entirely new billing platform. So now you've got to take into account that there's the cost of that product as well. So there's lots of different costs, lots of ancillary costs that you need to take into account when it comes to building and setting up a PSA tool. And it's hard to put a figure on exactly what that cost is going to be, but there is going to be huge costs. And this is why, coming right back to the beginning, making that decision, why my recommendation is not just following what everyone else is doing, because it's not just something you can go, I'm going to take this PSA tool out and stick another tool in, because there are going to be costs involved. And this is not something that MSPs can do themselves. This is why there's so many consultants
helping out with
PSA stuff, because an MSP cannot do this themselves and run an MSP business.
So just before we wrap up, Chris, we've just spent 30 odd minutes probably depressing every MSP and vendor and anyone into why this is going to be the hardest thing, the most costly thing, the most difficult thing you can ever do. And if you're still listening now, then fair play to you. Congratulations. But Chris, when you get this right and you get the right tool for your MSP, it can be transformational, can't it? It can be absolutely help your business scale. Well, you tell me, why should people, when they do this right and they get the right tool for their business, what are some of the success stories that you've seen in terms of efficiency and cost reduction, ROI, and all of that kind of great stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I see a lot, especially moving from one tool to another, is automating your business and suddenly people being able to go, wow, the stuff I was doing before manually that was taking me an hour to do billing or 2 hours to do billing, I've now moved to a new tool where I can click one button and it just does everything for me automatically. So that's a huge time save. And that kind of time save is going to pay for the consultant's fee to be able to. So you've got, at that point where you can say, that's a huge benefit, a huge save to your business. So yeah, I see it all the time that people use tools and there's this light that goes on in their heads and they go, wow, this is really cool. I can do, I can automate this process, or I can do this process much better. It handles my integrations much better, brings in my license counts, and it does them better than the tool I had before. And then just even things quoting, some tools have really good, some PSA tools have much, I wouldn't say really good, but they have much better quoting abilities than other tools do. Again, coming back to that whole cost saving thing, that's a massive cost save to a company when they can say, actually, I can use now, I've never been able to use the quoting in the previous tool I had, but I can use it in the new system. And it's going to make me much more efficient because it's all built in, and I'm not having to then switch to a third-party tool and do all my quoting in this third-party tool and bring it back into my PSA and all these things. I can just do it in the tool that I'm in. There's massive benefits, and I see it all the time when people they realize that and realize how much more efficient they become as an MSP switching to a new tool.
Talk to me just quickly before we close down, Chris, on the impact of the technical team. Obviously, the business owner wants to make it more efficient because he wants to improve his profitability, his scalability, and getting everything where he needs to be. But the people who are actually using these tools day in, day out, what do you hear from them when they get the right tool and they feel the benefits of some of the things that you do in your work?
Yeah, most of the time when I speak to technical people, they absolutely love it when they see a tool that is actually working much more efficiently and making their job easier. Automating a lot of the processes that they would be doing manually, they can do a lot more things much quicker. So they can respond to customers quicker, they can onboard customers quicker, without them again having to jump to multiple different tools. And I think, especially if it's a tool that's been set up correctly, what you tend to find is that the engineers can learn pretty quickly. So they'll see a tool and they'll go, there's not a huge amount of, I said there's a learning curve, and there is, but very often you'll get to a point where the technicians learn the stuff much quicker because it's a tool that helps them to be more efficient. So they're much more willing to learn things quicker on how to do particular things within the product, like creating tickets without having to create a ticket with 54 clicks. You can create a ticket with 5 clicks. Or 2 clicks in some cases.
And then that will give them time to then go and learn and develop and innovate their skills to look at other solutions to help the MSP and get everything in a great place. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you very much for your time and expertise today. This is as I say, this is like a bit of an open heart surgery moment for MSPs. But when you get it right, it can be absolutely transformational to your efficiency, your ability to stay out of overwhelm, profitability, and all those other great things as well. What's the top 3 things, Chris, that MSPs need to do if they want to consider moving their PSA?
Yeah. First one I would say is make sure you're moving for the right reasons. Make sure that the tool you are moving to is going to be the right tool. And make sure that if you weren't using all the features in the tool that you had before, when you're switching to a new tool, don't just go from using a service desk in this tool to using a service desk in this tool. Make sure that you absolutely understand what the tool is capable of doing, and make sure that you're using all the features of the PSA tool, because that's what's going to really make your business much more efficient and change things. And then I think the third one, and of course I'm going to say this, is absolutely make sure that you are working with somebody, whether it be the vendor or whether it be a consultant, but don't try and do this yourself. PSA tool is not something that you can just do yourself and spend a couple of minutes here and there or a couple of hours here and there. Make sure you get somebody that is dedicated to, and that understands the product, that can help you to set it up and make sure that it's working efficiently and working in the best way that it possibly can for your
Brilliant
business.
stuff. Thanks, Chris. And if people want to continue the conversation that we've been having today with yourself, how do they get in contact with you?
I think most people who probably listen to your podcast probably have heard of me, know where I am. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the forums, Tech Tribe, LinkedIn forums, some of the PSA forums on Facebook and all those kind of things. Or they can just reach me by reaching out to sondelaconsulting.com, leave a message on the contact us, and I will happily get back to them and talk to them about it.
Brilliant stuff. Well, it's great to see you again, Chris. Great to grab some of those insights around this wonderful changing world of PSAs. There's some exciting products out there that are really going to be quite disruptive, I'll see, over the next couple of years, which is great to see. And wishing you all the best of luck. And catch up with you on the next one. See you soon, mate.
Excellent. Thanks very much for having me, Ian. Appreciate it.
No problem. Cheers, Chris. Oh, but one last thing, just before you shoot off. And if you're curious about how this episode links with the ability to scale your MSP to $1 million, or if you're already there, accelerate to 5, then we want to invite you to come and take the MSP Mastery Quiz. And in just 3 minutes, you're going to get a 360-degree scan of your business where you can identify the 1 or 2 tactics that can help you find more time, engage and align your people, and help generate more leads in your MSP. It's really simple. Just click on the link in the show notes. And if you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love to get some feedback from you by means of a rating, review on Spotify or iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. We really appreciate every single one of them. Now you can go and enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up and connecting with you soon. All the best now.